Hello, welcome to the CarCast+Edmunds podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndrea, here with Alistair Weaver. How you doing?
I'm all right, thank you, Matt. It's been a bit
Yeah.
of a frantic morning. Was suddenly called into a could I do a TV interview about the Cybertruck having another recall? So
Yeah.
if I'm looking a little bit like disheveled, if you're on YouTube, that's probably why. It's been I've put a formal shirt on for TV interviews, but back in something a bit more casual now.
This is your TV look.
No,
This
this is
is
not my TV look. My TV look is a little more formal, a little more, you get that kind of earnest Alistair, not the more natural self on podcast.
the one chasing after the kids. Trying
Exactly. It's a
to...
day off school today as I record this, so regular listeners will know that that brings certain challenges.
Yeah, and I know we're both hitting the road for a number of things. I've got some car stuff lined up next week. I'll see if we can get another show in the can somehow. If not, we might have to do something or pick something from the archive that we thought was kind of fun. But we'll come up with something. But yeah, check out I'm gonna check out the Nissan Museum in Tennessee, the Heritage Museum. I haven't had a
Oh,
chance to
nice.
do that. And I've got a trip planned and I happen to be swinging by there. So I was like, hey, can I get in and check that out? Uh
And
and
I'm off to Nice. I'm off to nice Nice in the
Nice.
south of France. I'm in the south of France, which sounds very glamorous. I'm in the south of France for all of 30 hours to drive the new Audi A5. So we're
Okay.
flying to Nice, and then I have to fly back Nice to Amsterdam in the Netherlands and back to LA. But yeah, nice. Looking forward to that one. Nice to. I don't do too many of these things these days. There's a lot of my team go out on these trips, and so it's nice to go and drive a new car and catch up with everybody.
And I'm driving now here in LA. I'm driving the Audi SQ8. So it's interesting you're going out to drive the new car as well. Um,
It's
we
the
we
S5
recovered it.
actually we're driving.
Yeah. The We talked about it earlier this week on the previous show about the SQ8, but just a nice look, no fussing around with the EV side of things, and fits nicely in between the Q8 and the RS Q8, and you get a comfortable ride even on 23-inch wheels, 500 horsepower, V8. It's just there. It's just
It's enough, right? It's a sweet
yeah,
spot. I think
it
there is a
is.
lot of ranges you talk about like that kind of medium point where the sweet spot in a range is,
Yeah.
and a lot of time it's not the crazy one with the massive wheels. It's actually somewhere in the middle.
Right.
A
Like
lot of cars have that. It's like the
it
911 GTS is probably the sweet spot if you've got the money, or the 911T if you want to save a little bit of money.
yeah,
But
100%. Yeah, and this one fits in there. And you save 25, 30 grand, maybe even a little bit more uh by stepping down from the RS. And yeah, you get the dynamic suspension, comfortable ride. And I don't know, the difference between this one at 0 to 60 in 4 seconds and the RS at 3.7 seconds, not going to change your life, I don't think.
it's probably all right. Once you got past the psychology of not quite having the fastest and the most expensive, I think actually it turns out to be a kind of nicer family car. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
500 horsepower in a mid-size luxury SUV is okay.
yeah,
That's
that's it. Like
enough.
it's a good size for you're right, mid-size, like the Q7 is kind of the same platform, but it's a three-row configuration of it. And this one is just a nice configuration for the I guess you could say five passenger, two row. There's more leg room in this one than there is in the Q7 because they gotta move the middle seats up to get room for the rear seats. So, but I'm gonna be driving that one as well later in the month, so I can kind of compare the three row versus the two row. But anyway, yeah, it should be kind of fun. Um, you mentioned Tesla a minute ago. You were doing some stuff on the air with them. Let's get into that, but first, let's talk real quick about our friends at Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. And if you think you know your stuff, you can get in on their $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of that $200,000. And when the game's over, head on over to their online casino to get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with over 150 different slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. Okay, so Tesla was in the news again this morning, not just because you were literally on the news, but,
I was the news.
you were the news. But sort of the cause and effect. Tesla caused it, and you ended up being on the news as a result of it. What's going on with the Cybertruck?
I mean, it's another recall. I think this time it's a reversing camera. Apparently, it's not started. I was so hot off the press that I'm still getting up to speed with it. I understand it's something to do with how long it takes to boot up, but we've owned every Tesla since the original Model S, and the early ones were really badly built. The reality is the Cybertruck is a lot better built, but it's still an experimental vehicle that's relatively new. And I think they're trading on the fact that the early adopters will just love the fact that they've got a Cybertruck so much that they'll end up just buying, they'll just buy it anyway and forgive it. But as these things mount up, because a lot of the over-the-air updates are, a lot of the recalls are handled by over-the-air updates. And
Yeah,
and that's not just on Tesla, even on the Genesis that we have in the family, that was the case. But some of the things recently have actually been physical hardware. So I think the rear, a sort of rear wiper issue. Then there was to do with the rear bed. There was an issue there that our truck had to go in. Now, if it's the camera, these are all things that basically take time out of your life to go and fix. And that's a different thing to an over-the-air update. Now, let's face it, recalls are nothing new on a relatively new vehicle, but as they start to mount up, so does the irritation factor. And of course, it's 100 grand, right? It's not
yeah.
a, it's difficult.
This is like the fourth or fifth
I
recall
believe
on
this is
this
number five.
five on the Cybertruck. And
I
like you
believe
said,
it's
I
number
mean, there's
five on the Cybertruck.
oftentimes a quick fix, but in this case, if the rear camera is not booting up like fast enough or not coming on when you're putting it into reverse, that's that's also a federal regulation, so that's part of the issue.
Yes, and that's yes, that becomes a legislative thing. I'm just reading the last the service department for the last one that we just did. Check tire pressure and condition. Set tire pressure to factory recommendation. Um, what's the next one? Replace wiper motor assembly. Remove and replace. Okay.
Okay,
Next
that's a
one.
hardware issue.
Replace LLO left hand and right hand sail appliques and install push nuts. Remove and replace. I had to ask somebody in the team what on earth was a sail applique, but apparently this is something to do with it. Do you know what a sail applique is, Matt?
I'm guessing it's a part of the body panel behind the cockpit.
Pretty good. It is on the side of the bed.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Um,
envisioning.
yeah, where they were becoming loose and detaching. So
Yeah,
there
so
you
basically
go.
it's a side in this particular case, I believe it's the big stainless panel that's on the side of the
That,
bed, part of the bodywork, and somehow that's
that
coming off.
that's right. I'm just looking at it now. It's the bit that basically makes your bed look tidy
Yeah.
along the left hand and right hand side. That is what a sailor pleek is. So anyway, that's been replaced. The sailor pleek has been replaced, and now it seems we've got a problem with the rear view camera, which I don't know yet, but it sounds like it's probably going to be more of a hardware issue rather than something that they can do through over-the-air updates. It's kind of ironic that Tesla's probably got better at this rather than worse at it. Some of the early cars were going, there were the bits of trim falling off and everything else. They've got way better at that. But obviously, the Cybertruck is so experimental in so many ways. And this
Yeah.
is kind of one of the ironies. Did it need to be this vehicle? Probably not. But I think as we saw over time and over the development, it went from being, we're going to build a Ford F-150 and we're going to sell 600,000 a year to let's do something way out there where we can test loads of our latest gizmos.
Yeah.
So when you do stuff that's way out there and you test loads of your latest gizmos, they have a tendency to go wrong, right? That's kind of par for the course. And I guess what they're saying is somebody spending 100 grand on a Cybertruck buys it because they want a massive stainless steel truck. And if a couple of things go wrong, it'll be like, hey, Ceylon.
Yeah. It's interesting because when we were in Monterey Car Week and I was talking to Adam Carolla about it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's sort of become like the Malibu, you know, cool thing to have." You
It's the
know,
Malibu Uber.
yeah, like it's just, he's just like I see them all, he's like I stand on the balcony of my house and I overlook the road and I can see, just a bunch of these things all the time. Obviously because they stand out and they're very noticeable. But if you see three, it's probably a lot. But yeah, that's sort of where it became. You're right. So it didn't really turn out to be like, hey, we're going after F-150. We're going to be on job sites all across America. Instead, it's like we're just on the PCH in Malibu going to
That was exactly what the
Starbucks.
TV. It's exactly what this news interview was about. It's like, if you were running a construction company, would you buy one of these instead of like an F-150 or something? I was like, well, it does a lot of trick stuff reasonably well, but unless you're trying to make a massive statement about who you are, probably not. No, you'd probably buy a hybrid, like an F-150 hybrid. Is probably the best work truck at the moment, just in
Yeah.
terms of gas mileage, flexibility,
Yeah,
etc.,
usability on the
etc.
job site, things like
Yeah,
that.
I
Um,
can see buying a
yeah,
Cybertruck if you want to, like, I don't know, maybe you run like a high-end AV company or something and you want to make a big statement. But also the problem is everybody knows it's expensive and it looks expensive. Even if you turn in a Lightning, which is expensive and sometimes, as you know, is the same money, but it doesn't look the same money. I think you can turn up in a Lightning and look like an honest, like a sensible tradesperson. You sign up in
yeah,
a Cybertruck, I'm going to think you're overcharging me. I'm sorry. Just maybe that's my prejudice.
yeah, yeah. All right, that's a good point. Well, as a general contractor, but if you're sort of more on the
Especially with a terrible rap on it, right?
yeah. Okay, so that's where we are with Cybertruck. I guess it's going to get fixed. Are I assume all of them, or do we know it's not all of them? Do you know if your Cybertruck was on the list?
I mean, if it's a rear view camera, it's probably a rear view camera. It's probably all of them, right? I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know, Matt. I'm sort of. This is hot off the press.
Right, it just
I
came
was
out,
called
so
on.
we'll see if you
Yeah,
guys get
I was knee jerk
the
reaction of
email or
should what the hell is a Cybertruck? And it's funny. It's so polarizing that I tried to give a very balanced. Well, of course, if it's like a sensible TV interview, and then the guy was like, "Oh, he thought it was a bit boring." I'm like, I'm Edmunds. I'm sensible consumer advice. I'm giving you sensible consumer advice. And I think what he wanted was a big hatchet job. So we'll see.
yeah.
Well, maybe not what he wanted, but maybe what he expected. As a very fair interview, I think what
All
he
right,
what he
so
what he
yeah, so
expected me was to come in and say it's terrible, don't buy one. And actually, if you want a Cybertruck, buy a Cybertruck, right? You just have to put up with a few things.
right. But you're not the only ones. Like there's plenty of other cars that you can get into. It's
There's
interesting
also
is
plenty of cars you can get into with recalls at the moment. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's plenty of startup brands. I was thinking about this morning on the way in. Over here in like this West Side area in California, this Venice, Marina del Rey, Playa del Rey area. I believe Playa has a Vinfast office, and there's a little like retail store in a strip mall kind of shopping area over in Marina del Rey and maybe one in like Santa Monica, but I'm starting to see them on the road, probably because there's a big like corporate office over here. Um, how come nobody's talking about this thing? Is it just it?
the lease deal's
I-
on a Vinfast right now. So if people aren't familiar with what Vinfast is, Vinfast is a Vietnamese company, which it's not a state company, but it is like the biggest company in the country. So it's kind of like a national thing. And they are building, it's an EV startup run out of Vietnam. They've hired a bunch of American executives as well and looking to get into the market. The press reviews of the early vehicles, I think there's a VF8, weren't great. But they have a range that is coming down the can. They're designed by Pininfarina. I'm saying all this, Mike, and nobody prepped me that we're going to talk about VinFast, but I'm giving you what I know.
yeah,
VF8 was the first one here. There's a VF9, which I think is a 3-row, which Pininfarina did the styling, and they're pretty, they're pretty cars. They're not like super distinctive, but there's nothing there's nothing sort of offensive in any way. They're a pretty car. They've got this, but the early reviews, particularly their VF8, were just not that great. That there was a bunch of sort of driving issues and software issues and everything else. So I think they're feeling their way into the market. But some of the lease deals at the moment um,
yeah, this is
are
crazy.
really
$199,
aggressive. Yeah,
$199
200
for a
bucks,
third,
right? And not a lot of
and
money down.
And just to get ahead of some of those early reviews is the first thing you see on their website is 10-year, 125,000-mile warranty.
Exactly, and it's a big car. I mean, we're talking about that's kind of Model Y sized for $200 a month. VF9 is bigger. VF, then you've got other ones coming down the thing. The
Yeah.
VF6 is a very pretty car. VF7. It reminds me a little bit of, today we talk about Kias and Hyundais being exceptional cars, and they truly are. But I started my career 25 years ago, and Hyundais and particularly Kias were in a very different place. And we're now seeing not so much in the US, but we are seeing in Europe the Chinese brands come on board and move very quickly. And Vinfast probably haven't got it right at the start, but I suspect we'll get there. They have proper money. This is not a startup that's, we're not in a Fisker situation. They
Yeah.
have serious corporate backing behind them. And, I think they will get there. It might take them a little bit of time. And they've got to be careful that they don't get a bad reputation because, as you know, once you get a bad reputation, it's hard to overcome that. But they're determined to sort of sell direct to consumers. They've got they've hired a bunch of industry stalwarts over here, and Vietnam is the new career.
Yeah, I peeked inside one. You're right. The exterior, it's got kind of a Alfa Romeo thing going on with it.
Yeah,
A little bit of an Italian kind of design to it, like you
yeah.
like you were
Well, it
saying,
was designed by Pininfarina. Yeah,
right? And it like you're seeing that they didn't really venture far away from what they normally do, right? The interior is fine, maybe a little plain. Uh, but yeah, I just curious, it just hasn't really come up. I just don't know how far along. I guess they're trying to get a few vehicles on the road now. Um,
I think as we've seen in the
it just
US as well,
yeah.
but there isn't. If you build a good vehicle at a sensible price point over here, people will buy them. I mean, look at Hyundai and Kia's success in recent years. Amazing. So would people buy a VinFast? Yeah, I think, get the product right, get the price point right. It's going to have to be cheaper probably than the domestics or the Europeans or the Japanese, which I think they'll get there. It's EV only. So, they've also, to be fair to them, come into the time, everybody's got really excited. It's another EV startup, and then they've just launched into a market where everybody's suddenly going, hang on a minute. And, EV sales are still growing, but not growing at the kind of pace that everybody kind of expected. And a
Yeah.
lot of that's driven by incentives and lease deals and everything else. So they've suddenly hit the market at a really tough time. So you're trying to launch a brand from Vietnam that nobody's heard of. You're trying to launch into a market which is having a bit of a kind of gulp and a correction. So, tough job, guys, tough job. But I think they'll get there, but I think it'll take time.
I'm just curious to see when you guys get your hands on one and be able to thoroughly test
We
it and
we
put it
drove
through.
we did a first drive, but at the moment there are no press vehicles, which, you know, there's a
Yeah.
reason probably there's no
It's
test vehicle.
probably a reason why. You should contact them and see if they'll trade your Fisker
Yeah.
for one of these. Are you
Matt, you're
pouting
on. You're
now?
on. Every time I tell you what, every time you mention my financial problem with Fisker, I'm just going to mention residuals on your F-150 Lightning,
Yeah,
and
fair enough.
it's
Actually,
it's it's a bit of a toss-up now. Have I lost more money on the Fisker than you've lost on the F-150 Lightning? It's
ooh, that's
it's
that's a good question.
and
Well,
this
I
is
can
like
drive my Lightning.
yeah, we can try the Fisker.
Uh, you're right. I probably lost more on mine
You've
than you
also got
guys.
further to go because I haven't really got anywhere to go. So,
Um, no, actually, what's interesting is there's been like an owners group for the Fisker already coming up, and they're already trying to address a bunch of the issues that they can. Like, there's probably going to be tons of software issues, but they're getting together and going, "Hey, can we pool our knowledge base and resources and go start talking, and going, yes, well, I found a fix for this, or I found a fix for that, or like something, this door latch thing jams, or this is, trim is falling apart, and someone's like, I found a clip we can use, and cross compatibility of parts, or how to modify. So the community is already trying to get together and going, how do we keep these things going for a little while? If you have them, what do we do?
you got to be careful. Somebody came out and said, "Oh, we've got like a third-party workaround for the fact that the keyless entry thing isn't really working anymore." And then I got this email from Fiskars. It's like, don't do that, because what you don't understand is if you apply that bit of software, that's like the butterfly in the Amazon. There's like all this compound stuff that that
Yeah.
impacts this, and that's these vehicles are so complex and are so sort of software. They're a software led vehicle that do one thing. It's a bit like when you update your iPhone, right? You got to be really careful. You do one thing and then suddenly this app doesn't work or this doesn't work, and
Well,
that's the
also
challenge with people.
security issues, right? Somebody goes,
Oh,
"Oh, I've got a software fix that you can somehow do this or upload or plug in a USB device and we can make the keyless entry work more flawlessly." And go, "Yes, but then you've just exposed it to some sort of security risk like Kia is going through right now with their EV cars. There's uh, a number of ways. There's a device that looks like a little Nintendo Game Boy that you walk up and it unlocks the doors and you're ready to
but
go."
nobody's going to steal the Fisker.
No one's, oh, there you go. I guess no one's gonna
I'm
steal
sorry, nobody's going to steal a car where it's like, what do I do? Well, what? What? It's not what?
the.
But it's funny. Like we were out with a Lucid engineer the other week, and I'd stupid lock the door. Like we do that thing where you lock the door, and then it's like, oh, okay, if you just push the rear door handle, that's like there's almost like, especially if you're developing these cars, like little cheats. You push the little door handle a little bit, and that generally opens the car. That's fine. So there's all these little things, these like little what do you call them? Like little Easter eggs that you find in a lot of these cars that a lot of the
Yeah.
development engineers have worked into them. But yeah, it's I don't know whether Fisker in time will become sort of culty, but I doubt it.
Well,
I doubt it.
the first Fisker Karma EV has, those pop up and trade at auction, and then, for a minute they were worth nothing, and then they became a little bit of something, and then this company came along and said, "Let's strip out the EV platform and put gas engines in them." And they launched a whole nother company with that. I don't know that they survived, but there
It
was something there.
put like a Corvette V8 in it or something.
That's what they did with the Fisker Karma, you
It's
know?
I do love people's ingenuity. I always love what people, and then what people are willing to spend. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds like the way forward. Here's
Yeah.
50 grand.
Oh, that for
It's
the conversion, but you could probably go buy the car for 250,000 if you went to
man.
the manufacturer of
I,
whatever the new Karma gas engine version is.
I do this sort of. I look at these auction sites, and there's plenty online, and just what people will spend. Like I get it. Like you buy an old 911 or something, that feels like a instinctively reasonably sensible proposition, right? You can understand the economics of that. Some of the left field stuff, like TVRs, I grew up driving TVRs,
Yeah.
absolutely adored them, wonderful cars. And I'm kind of amazed how many pop up on like online auction sites over
Yeah.
here. Like occasionally you'll see like a TVR Server. TVR Server was never sold in the US, never federalized. There was one that came over for a John Travolta movie called Swordfish. I think it was
Yeah.
John Travolta and Halle Berry. And TVR imported one and it was in for that. But then somehow they've crept into the company and they're all on British plates and they're all right-hand drive. And they
I,
just
I
keep
I saw one out here.
this
Yeah.
is the new one, right? This is yeah,
We're
this
just
was a
looking
sort
at
of
a new
older
TVR.
one.
And honestly, I don't know enough about it. Like, I don't know who's making them. I don't know who owns the company now. I'm sure it's changed ownership. I don't know if this is a parts bin car, if this thing's got like a BMW or an Audi or Ford underneath it. Honestly, I have no idea. But
But
uh,
the early cars, I mean, this is
yeah,
the one we're looking at on YouTube. Is like they keep trying to reinvent it and give it a rebirth. It was bought by a Russian oligarch, and then it was suddenly I don't know where it is now. But the early ones, like these cars, um, were so vulnerable when they were new. They were awesome, but they were building in such tiny numbers, and they were all hand built in a shed in the north of England. So none of you're always fixing them on the fly. But the idea of buying one in the US, I know the guy who's used to be a managing director and he's now a very successful PR guy, lovely man, Ben Samuelson. And I was like, he was like, yeah, get one bought, buy one. I think it was one in Marina Del Rey. I was like, Ben, they didn't really work very well when they were new. And we every time you picked a press cut, something was experimental on it. So what would you do in the US if you bought one of these? Because not only did they build the car, they also built the engine. They started off with Rover V8s, which was very sensible because, there was a squillion of those. And then they said, actually, that's not doing what we want. So they built their own straight six and their own V8. I mean, this is how eccentric you're selling at their peak like 1,500 cars a year, something like that. And they built their own engines. It's like, how
Yeah.
nuts is that? They were, there you go, Swordfish. Yeah.
Yeah.
TVR, TVR. That was a Tuscan. It wasn't a Cerberus, forgive me. But my boss, when I joined Autocar in '98, he was a works driver for TVR. So he was racing a TVR, which was a
Yeah.
frightening. It was it was an extraordinary car, and he was a Steve Sutcliffe. He's still in the or is still in the game. Amazing driver, lovely guy as well. And so I was 21 years old, and he was basically like, here you go, son, and here's my company car, which was a 4 liter Cerbera which had been tuned, and this thing was just like no ABS, no traction control, no stability control, tiny little tires on it because they didn't believe in putting big fat tires on it. Um, Super intimidating, but like nothing on earth. And unfortunately, what killed TVR, I've really gone off on one here. It's a bit passionate. What killed TVR in the end is the Porsche Boxster came along because, and it's a bit like a lot of these cars today. It's a bit like Lotus has the same problem. You go, oh, I'm going on a road test, or I'm going like drive one car one day, drive before you die, sort of thing. Drive a TVR.
Yeah.
Shall I buy one of those, or shall I buy a Boxster built by Porsche in Germany? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
TVR built their own seats. They did everything. I mean, Tesla, they're almost like a Tesla before what Tesla. They did their own seats, and I remember going up to the factory, and they had pretty much like a bunch. I don't mean to sound in a patronizing way, but they had a bunch of old ladies doing all the circuit boards by hand, like soldering stuff. It was wonderful. It was like cottage industry. But also, you understood then, like, when they were so complex, where things started to go wrong, and
Yeah. The issue, like, again, with things like that and like with the Fiskern is just like, even if you can start to fix things, it's like, where do you start to get parts from? And then who's going to make parts and what can you source?
yeah, can I
And
have it?
I
Yeah,
mean, it's like a little different than something like a Panos, right? Where that, yeah, it had their aluminum frame, their aluminum chassis on it and some suspension pieces, but the drive line was basically a Ford Mustang Cobra. The dash was straight out of a Mustang. And so there's a few things there where you can go, oh yeah, there's parts for that.
yeah.
I can go get some of the sensors and some of the issues that I need to repair that thing. But you're right. If you're TVR and you're like, I'm, making everything from seats to engines, you're gonna have a bit of an issue. I mean,
But they also
maybe
did
there's a
like
few parts,
yeah,
but
and they did stupid stuff like they said we're gonna. I mean, Tesla does it today, okay, but this was late '90s, early 2000s. It's like we're not gonna have door handles anymore. We're done with door handles. We're gonna have buttons, right? But buttons rely on really sound electrics, and so it was like, oh, like headlights, they require like good electrics as well. So, they did have like escape hatches. You could pull a handle eventually,
yeah,
but there was always a leap of faith when you pressed the button. So the button was under the wing mirror. So also a problem that if somebody whacked your wing mirror, like that was how you opened the doors. There's loads of stuff on it that was just. But again, like if you want an example of British curiosity, buy a Cerberus. Probably just buy a Cerberus and park it. Don't buy But when they worked, they were awesome things. Like unbelievably fast and exciting and thrilling and
kind
everything.
of cool looking for sure. They're cool looking.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, I want to.
Anyway,
I did a quick trip to Detroit to check out the new Ford Expedition. I want to talk about that, but first, let me tell you guys about Bravago and a few of our other partners, and we will be right back. Okay, so Ford Expedition. What are we like 30 years on the Expedition now? It's been around for a while, so
it's
this
been a
is
long expedition. So
it has been a long expedition. And as you can imagine, they're starting to wanting to throw a handful of things like we're going down this this path of adventure and off-road capability and tech and now the SUVs are in the tailgate wars along with the pickup trucks. So you've got to do all kinds of cool, wacky things with tailgates. It can't just open and close. It has to be a transformer back there. So we've got some interesting things with Ford Expedition. We saw the Lincoln Navigator up in Monterey, and that has the screen going all the way across the dash. So it kind of lowers the dash and puts the screen back. So Expedition didn't want to steal that completely. It does have a like a 24-inch screen, and it goes like halfway across the dash, and it's a little bit more forward view. So
It's like, no, you don't. Yeah.
it's
It,
yeah, it's still pretty massive. There's a couple of cool things that they did is one, it's got this center console and it's got this power center console in between the driver seats. And when it's moved up forward, it's just like a normal center console, armrest, shifter, the whole thing. Or maybe it doesn't have the shifter. Maybe that's off the side. And then and a bunch of plugs and stuff in the back. And then there's a switch and it's on a motor and it can slide backwards. So then it moves the plugs in the back closer to the rear passengers and it shifts storage for rear passengers. And then when it moves back, it opens up this new compartment in between the driver and passenger for a bag, a small backpack or purse or whatever. Now, what's interesting about it as well is because it's all power, you could slide it back. You can throw your small bag or something in there, close it, and then when you shut off the vehicle, it's essentially a lockable storage case. So it's so now you've
I,
got this center
it's,
console that slides back and forth.
I love this stuff because I mean, like these big American. I mean, these are unique to the US, aren't they? These huge vehicles that, but then give you this kind of like it is like taking your house with you. And I think if you go back like 20 years, cars were not nearly as clever. And I don't mean like all the electronics and hybrids and God knows what else. I just mean like nobody thought of this stuff, did they? Like cup holders. It's like cup holders are a relatively recent phenomenon, certainly in the way
Yeah.
that we know them today. And just why I kind of go back to the 70s, 80s. Why did nobody really think of this stuff? Because people use their cars in the same way, and everybody's just now kind of outsmarting each other, and it's great. The whole luxury. So you're saying like Expedition, Ford's got the same thing with Navigator in the same way, and Lincoln, the Navigator in the same way. Like we had a Hyundai Tucson in this week, the updated Tucson. I drove it home and it was the top spec version. I was like, this is really nice. And
Yeah.
like the leap, and then it's like, okay, what do we do with Genesis? Genesis needs to feel more opulent, more technology. You got to justify the price somewhere. And it's getting harder and harder. I think we were talking on a recent show, wasn't it, about the S Class. You don't get that wow factor anymore. And something like the Expedition is getting so nice that then it's a challenge for Lincoln to say, is there psychologically a big leap between a 24-inch screen and one that wraps all the way around? And then,
Yeah.
okay, is the difference the fact that you've got this, what's it called, this calming mode where you get like a massage and some forestry music and
Yeah. And
I mean, like, is
it's
that what luxury is now?
well, they're trying to separate them by turning the Expedition into more of an off-road capable vehicle, or at least a very like road trip capable vehicle for the kids or a crew or whatever. There's storage pockets and cup holders and outlets for everything. A couple of, by the way, a Tremor model as well that rides on 33-inch tires and it has like 10.6 inches of ground clearance. So there's a handful of things in it that they're trying to do that I think is meant to kind of separate uh, this from the Lincoln. So I've got a few images of it, and you can see they still have like a King Ranch edition. They have a Tremor.
I love the fact that they always put a canoe on the top, isn't it?
There's oh yeah. By the way,
You gotta like what? How do you make it? What do we do to make it lifestyle? Get a canoe. It's
got
like
it. Oh no, the displays that they put together are really kind of cool, very creative because it's in like a warehouse, almost like a soundstage we would have out here, and then the backdrops are very graphic and kind of fun, and
it
then
is. It
yes,
is. It is fun. Like I remember, like when I lived in the UK, like there's always a surfboard. It's like there's like 10 people surfing in the UK.
it's really like, but here they made it so they got it all lit up. So when you take a picture of the interior,
Yeah, it's
you
nice.
see trees and stuff in the background, which is just a big screen.
Uh,
So here we're looking at a photo where they have the 24-inch screen. In the photo, it looks small, but keep in mind an Expedition is massive. So
Also, it's a Quartic steering wheel, isn't it? You got that kind of slightly eccentric steering wheel, and Ford's desperately trying to improve the quality of everything. That's their big push. And also as a philosophically, I mean, we had Jim Farley on the show a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
and if you listen back to that interview, his big point was we're going to try and be the king of the king of the niche. We don't want to do, we're kind of giving up on trying to sell, middle of the road stuff. We want to sell, off-road expeditions and
Yeah.
Mustangs and Broncos, and let's focus on the stuff that, the more iconic stuff, which is an interesting strategy just to sort of, and I think it's probably not a bad idea for a company of Ford's size, but I also get it, like even living in California, if you go skiing, you go skiing, go up to Big Bear or something, if you live in LA, then actually a vehicle like this can start to make sense. So I'm all for it. I think
The,
I like vehicles like, they're just good road trip things, aren't they? They're really good road trip vehicles,
I
all of
mean, and
these.
certainly plenty of room and so many different configurations of it. Like we're looking at pictures of the Tremor right now, and you can see it on the more aggressive tires, and it's lifted a little bit basically, and has running board to step into it. They give it the graphics package and stuff, but it's not just that. They've changed the gearing and its off-road modes, and they put some integrated light bars basically into the grill as well. So they're trying to make things more than just an appearance package, even like they started doing it on little Bronco Sport. Um, so they're doing some pretty cool things with it. And then when we get to this is the Platinum, this is kind of, if you don't want quite the Lincoln Navigator, you've got this one. And in the particular photo, they've also got the extended version of it. This adds almost another foot of length. So if the Expedition isn't big enough, you've got this extended version of the Expedition, and the thing is massive. It's gorgeous on the inside, but it is certainly a big vehicle. I
I
mean, you're
think
right,
that's the
and
thing when you get into the extend, they just kind of keep bolting stuff onto the rear, isn't it? The Jeep, it looks particularly awkward when you start just having not the longer wheelbase, but the longer rear overhang version. Just like luggage
it's
space, bolt another 3 feet onto the arse, basically.
you look at the extended version of this thing. If you fold down all the seats and open that rear hatch, from there to the front seats, all that room you have is probably it's got to be way bigger than the bed of my 95 Lightning, because that truck now it seems small to me. And so the inside of this thing is bigger than probably that whole truck.
Well, well, that's it. And then also remember, this is still a truck underneath, and the
Yeah.
fact that we happily sell 100 grand, or 130 grand versions like the Navigator is still a truck fundamentally. So it's it's interesting that there is still this appetite for body on frame, truck based gargantuan SUVs. But I also get it. If you've got a big family or granny and grandpa live next door, and it's just a good family. It's a good
I,
family wagon.
440 horsepower, 3.5 liter EcoBoost. The picture we're looking at now, and I'll throw these pictures up on social media as well, is they were saying, oh, instead of integrating monitors for the second row passengers and using our proprietary system, they came up with an innovative sort of holder clip system to hold anything from an iPad to a phone, and you can charge it right off the back of the seat, and you can use your own devices.
I think that makes total sense.
It makes
Most of
total
those.
sense,
I,
right?
I was in an S class recently, like the rear screen, Mercedes proprietary system, and it was just so clunky. It's like just plug in your iPad, run it off the car's Wi-Fi, or if it's off its own Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
It's
because it
just a
has a
much
hot
better.
spot.
Yeah, then pick it up and take it with you. It's a lot better solution. And let's face it, the aftermarket's been doing this for years. So, but again, democratization of technology. You used to get in a car like a luxury car with a rear screen. It's like, oh my God, I got a rear screen. This is like the best thing ever. And now it's like, why don't you just take your phone? Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, take your phone with you, and you could just hook it up there, and you run all of your own apps and stuff. So when we get around to the back, we have the tailgate, and what they wanted to do was just like, hey, if you're throwing a bunch of sports gear and there's soccer balls and stuff, or even just groceries, how often do you open the hatch? You have to step back because it's so far away, and then all of that stuff comes rolling out the back. So they broke it into two pieces where the main portion opens up, and then the lower portion would fold down like a little tailgate. And this allows you to walk up closer to it, and then basically just have like a giant cubby back there, so none of the stuff rolls out the back. But then of course you could fold that down and access all of this stuff. But then they added this other piece going, hey, well, we've got plugs and outlets and all kinds of things to do in the back of the truck. So part of the cover system is you can set it up. It's a hard plastic piece with little legs on it, and it attaches to the back, and it becomes a table, if you will, like
Oh,
a
that's
serving table
cute.
or something.
Yeah.
And then you can take it and flip it on its side, and it becomes a seat. So now you can sit on the back of the
Look
bed.
at
They were going,
that.
hey, you can sit on the tailgate, but like a lot of tailgates, you just fall back. Well, this has a backrest, so now you can lean up against it. So anyway, a handful of fun features that they're trying to build into these vehicles that I think are going to be kind of interesting. Again, how to separate this from Lincoln Navigator is they're trying to put a lot of those functionality things in there. Um, uh, anyway, it just turns out to be kind of cool. And I didn't get, I got to see if I don't think I got a video of it, but I was trying to show that center console moving back and forth. And, you could, like you said, you could almost fit like a backpack back there. Not a big one, but certainly a handbag or something like that, and becomes this other level of storage. Um,
Something for my kids to break.
yeah, just something. Well, at least the buttons are in the front, not in the back. I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah,
you
yeah.
can
That's
move
the
it
thing.
from the back. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember if
Yeah,
there was,
the Genesis has
but
got like front seat controls on the side of the front seat, so of course it's just like,
yeah, right. Because I was thinking about that too. I was like, if I was a kid in the back, and every time you were driving and going for your drink and your cup holder, I'd hit that button and move that console back, so it would start to drift away from
yeah.
you, just just to be that kid. So, yeah. Anyway, that's what's going on with Expedition. Think there's probably by the time you're listening to this, there's been a big official launch about it. But
Edmunds.com/news.
yeah, it'll be up there, and I'm sure you guys will have more info and probably videos and stuff up there as well. But anyway, like, oh, by the way, we said the engines, the 3.5 liter EcoBoost, 440 horsepower, 510 pound-feet of torque.
And I
Um,
think they'll do a hybrid in due course.
that would make the most sense. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got on Expedition.
there we go. Splendid.
That's all I got on Expedition. Um, let's see, what else is there? Is there anything else we're missing?
I don't think a huge amount this week. Go to edmunds.com/news for all the latest. We're about to launch a new series of U-Drags in a couple of weeks' time, but that's still in post-production. Some of the times that we're getting, some of the quarter miles that we recorded, off the scale.
More information on the new Tesla Model 3 that you guys got.
Yep, Model 3 Performance that we now have. We should talk about that on the show, actually. I just got a message while you were talking. Were you doing about the Cybertruck at the beginning of the show? Somebody just like sent, you get it flashing up on your screen. It said, "RE Cybertruck, our center caps have still not shown up in the mail."
I
So,
was just
the
going to ask
center
about
caps
that.
didn't
I didn't
fit.
want to like, as I was picking on you about the Fisker, I didn't want to like lean in on the Cybertruck.
D-
I'm like, going,
we-
what's going on with the wheel covers?
Yeah, yeah. So for those who don't follow it, the center caps didn't fit, were rubbing on the wheels. So they were supplied without center caps, then they were supposed to show up, and they still haven't showed up. So anyway,
Yeah, which is interesting because now a bunch of these Cybertrucks have been sold off to other people, like on
yeah, what do you
online and
do
everything
then?
else, and like I, and if it goes to a dealer or something like that, and they sell it again, it'll be sold 3 times before those wheel covers come in.
Maybe it'll be like the Audi TT, that if you get the original '98 Audi TT without the rear spoiler, then it's now worth a fortune.
Yeah, that's right.
The early model without the wheel hubcaps, yeah, particularly desirable.
The missing pieces make it
Yeah.
more valuable. It's funny how that works. All right, let's say we're gonna wrap things up for today, and we'll be back next week. Mostly be
Yeah, I'm
back
I'm
next
around.
week.
I bet
Yeah,
get back in LA next Friday, Thursday. I get back next Thursday. We'll try and make
yeah.
something happen.
All right, guys. Of course, edmunds.com/news or car
Yep.
dash news.
Edmunds.com/news.
Yeah. Uh, guys, check that out, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.